For Global Business Update, Michael Wilson joins us now from London. Good morning, Michael.
The S&P had a good day yesterday, S&P 500 on Wall Street, and you would have thought that would have extended through to Asia Pacific. It didn't actually. Stocks there relatively mixed. The Hong Kong Hang Seng snapped a two-day advance down 0.2% overnight this morning, but the Nikkei up 1.6. A bit of a deflationary snapshot. I'll just say it's a snapshot. It's not a complete picture, just a snapshot of China. We're seeing the CPI up 0.2% in May instead of, that's inflation, instead of 0.3% expected. And prices falling there 4.6 year on year. Now, again, this is just a snapshot. It's just one set of figures, but it's kind of being taken as an indication of the softer demand and the lack of progress coming out of COVID and the rest of it that China is now facing. Underlining that, the OECD has come out with its world growth figures. It thinks the global economy will grow by 2.7%. But what it's saying is that India's growth will be greater than China's. India, it puts down for 6% growth this year. China down for 5.4%. Indonesia down for 4.7% growth. But India seen as the brightest light so far in Asia Pacific. That's for this year, and that's according to the OECD. Let us turn our attention to the United States. A recap there. I told you that the S&P 500 had a decent day yesterday. The investors like the fact that what they're seeing is a slightly broader rally in the market rather than just tech stocks. It's extending to smaller capitalized stocks as well, but the consumer is still finding things tough. I'm going to take you to Washington now, staying in the United States. The Biden-Sunak meeting resulted in something called the Atlantic Declaration. It's a series of mini deals. There was no big trade talk going on at this fireside chat. All they were talking about was a little bit of cooperation as far as AI is concerned, critical minerals and so on. And it may be that British defence manufacturers are classed as US domestic friendly, so that they won't be actually charged as much if they wish to enter that kind of trade with the United States. But do stress the big trade talks did not happen, and Biden's reaction to Sunak saying that the UK will be a centre of a hub for high tech and so on, and the AI conference coming up later in the week, relatively cool, we understand. Now, Binance, we're going to turn our attention to that because we talked yesterday about the SEC continuing its crackdown on crypto, and it's certainly doing that as far as Binance is concerned. Beyond June the 13th, investors in the United States will not be able to use US dollars to buy Binance's products. So effectively, Binance is saying it's being cut out of the US banking system. General Motors is to share the Tesla recharging facilities, which Ford already do. It gives Tesla quite a sort of leverage in the United States, because if you're in charge of charging, then you're helping the general infrastructure of EVs, which at the moment, I think most people would say lacking. So General Motors GM cars, electric cars, get access to 12,000 Tesla fast chargers. That's the bottom line there. Here's an interesting one from Turkey. Now, how do central banks normally deal with rising inflation? Correct. They rise interest rates. Not so in Turkey. So far, they've been lowering interest rates. But very interestingly, the third election of this man, Erdogan, has seen the awarding of somebody called Hafiz Gay Erkan, who worked for Goldman Sachs, is now going to be the governor of the Central Bank of Turkey. and also a finance minister who is reputed to be market friendly is taking the reins as well. Does this mean that Turkey will be moving to a more conventional, pivoting to a more conventional economic strategy? We wait to see. But that's important news from them. EU now, Germany is warning that the fiscal rules are from the EC are at a stalemate. What Germany is actually saying in very simple terms is a lot of states would like to take on debt and like better terms for that. Germany is very much against that. Germany is also very much against the EC having bilateral deals with countries, because it feels as though the EC might be convinced to be slightly softer on debt, and Germany, for one, does not want that. As far as UK shoppers are concerned, they're paying more for basic goods, much more, about 30% in some cases, much more for goods than their counterparts in the EU. We're talking about baby food, pet food, bread, milk, sugar. Some items, as I say, about 30% higher. We know that food inflation in this country has been about 19%. It's slightly off as we speak. Oil continues to remain relatively volatile. It's sort of stuck in a link between, Brent is stuck in a range between $70 and $80 a barrel. Not a lot will change. And gold is relatively choppy ahead of the Fed meeting next week, which will decide or show us what they've decided on interest rates in the United States. That's the global view.
Michael, where do you think the silver lining will come from as regards growth in the EU and in America?
The silver lining from what, Rufai? Sorry.
As regards growth, what will spur that growth?
Oh, I think, okay. Well, I think I would never I know that Germany appears to have gone into technical recession. Okay. I know that the EU appears to have gone into technical recession. This is technical recession, as you know, is 2 quarters of negative growth. We're seeing that from the EU, seeing that from Germany. I worry slightly about the United States, as I said last week, because of the hobbling that's been put on Biden's infrastructure plan, which would have created a lot of jobs. Whether you think it's the right way to create jobs, that's a whole different matter. I'm just saying that probably would have kept the economy going, people working, and so on. But I have to say that I think the US is skirting recession. When you see the jobless claims yesterday, which were relatively high, again, just a snapshot, but an indication that maybe things are slightly softer. So maybe that will be causing the Fed not to react quite so sharply at its meeting next week. Unfortunately, these are all maybes, but I certainly would not discount Germany or the United States in terms of being strong economies. I think they will be. I think what you're seeing now is they're way out of high inflation, low consumer spending, and all the other ills that are affecting developed economies. But I certainly would not discount them. I think Germany's far too strong as far as manufacturing is concerned. We haven't really seen it turn its talents to the EV market, and the United States is just so huge that you assume that and people and workers are very, very mobile indeed. So I wouldn't count them out.
All right, Michael, Rishi Sunak, Prime Minister, and Joe Biden, President of the United States, they're meeting. Despite the Atlantic Declaration, don't you think that's a bit underwhelming? Because what the UK, British people were expecting was a free trade deal. Bearing in mind that was one of the key promises of the Conservatives during the 2019 general elections, and they've come out now with some economic deals, but not quite the free trade agreements they were hoping.
No, they certainly aren't. I don't think anybody, I mean, I certainly wasn't. I wasn't expecting it. I don't think the markets were expecting it either. I don't expect they were expecting a free trade deal. I think they were expecting a push from Sunak to bring the artificial intelligence agency, to create one in the UK, to make it a centre of those kind of discussions. And I'm not surprised that we aren't hearing a great deal about that this morning, primarily because the US and the EU have both decided to do exactly the same kind of thing. Now, whether there will be a meeting of minds about this, I simply don't know. But no, I don't think anybody was expecting a trade deal, never mind what was put in an election manifesto in 2019. And all they got was a series of mini deals, which are I mean, they're good, but they're not a major trade deal. I don't think that the United States is ready for that kind of thing right now, given that it's floating between what to do about China and what its relationship with the EU needs to be as well. Never mind Russia and Ukraine.
Well, quickly, was it last week or earlier in the week we discussed the increase in fixed rates by the building societies and the banks in the UK? Well, the latest to join now is HSBC. It looks like everybody is increasing fixed rates. Well, I just wanted your comment on that and the effect, of course, for the mortgage industry in the UK. And then very quickly, China, the growth rate, the indicators point to a cooling economy. And it looks like that optimism that we had after the end of COVID has not played out in terms of economic recovery. And even the OECD, in their latest projections, are showing that India in 2023, even in 2024, will do much better than China, even if China still has the projection of about 5.4 economic growth.
Yeah, I think so. I think that the CPI figures that I mentioned earlier, certainly, as I said, it's a deflationary snapshot. I wouldn't put any further than that, because I think that what's going to happen, and I may be completely wrong about this, I think in July, after the Politburo meeting in China, the People's Bank of China will become very accommodative to the economy, will lower interest rates. We saw yesterday that deposit rates were actually falling. So yes, I think there's a crunch as far as mortgages are concerned, which is lending by the banks. However this pans out, I tend not to have a lot of, because I'm a cynic by heart, I suppose. I don't really believe that things like the Competition and Markets Authority, the CMA, and the Financial Conduct Authority, the other watchdog, will actually achieve a great deal. What they're trying to do is to make sure that the banks give a better deal for savers. What they're saying is, look, interest rates are rising, and all you're doing is piling it on the lenders. You're not giving anything to the savers. The banks are saying, well, you have to give us time to balance these things out. And the authorities are making a lot of noise about it. And I don't think that'll make any difference at all. As far as mortgages getting more expensive is concerned, you would think, just on a simple supply and demand, that therefore there are fewer mortgages, people less able to afford, therefore the price of houses, which tend to be quite a big part of people's income and financial assets in this country, would fall. I'm not so sure about that, because I think there's a shortage of houses as well. So it actually will be quite a complicated equation. But I think what we'll see, yes, certainly the banks almost have to join in, because their shareholders are saying, why are you not putting up mortgage rate? But at the same time, I think competition will begin to creep in, as it normally does in a few months' time, into the mortgage market. That's what I think will happen.
Well, thank you very much, Michael.